You're on the clock with Tyler Jennings and Jared Perkins, a Prospects Live podcast for everything MLB Draft related. Join us as we discuss the biggest stories from college and high school baseball, bring you interviews from your favorite draft prospects, and break down live looks with Prospects Live analysis across the nation. Get ready, because you're on the clock with Tyler Jennings and Jared Perkins.
All righty, welcome to another episode of On the Clock by Prospects Live. I'm Jared Perkins. Fortunately, don't have Tyler Jennings here today. He's busy working, but we do have an incredible guest joining us, Noah Darling, managing editor and founder of College Baseball Central, joining us to give a little bit of a college baseball preview. Noah, how are you doing today?
I'm great. It's about time that the season's ready to get rolling. You can kind of feel it itching up your skin a little bit. We're ready. It's game week.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing about the Super Bowl, it means that football's over and we're going into baseball. So for you, just give a little bit of background for the viewers, just so they know how you kind of got started covering the college game. I think all the things you all do over there is incredible. I for one, have been a big proponent of really bringing more attention to the college game because just not enough people do. It's such an incredible sport, and it's really incredible at the college level. So just kind of give people a little bit of background on you.
Well, I appreciate it, Jared. I know that we certainly try. I know that we kind of have a team of like 25 people across the country, but we all have 8 to 5 jobs that keep us pretty busy, but we try our hardest. It really started for me. I live in Omaha, so I grew up with the College World Series as a kid, just going as a fan. And, you know, tickets are expensive enough, but you get out there a couple times a year and you kind of get hooked on the product pretty easily. And then as time went on, I really decided that I wanted to learn more about the sport. So I originally started as just a fan. And even then, I still consider myself to be a learning fan per se, even though I have a title. Self-proclaimed title, but it's one that's been thrown around. So I appreciate that kind of rise, but it's been great to be able to learn and then also be able to gain friends inside the programs and things like that. We're able to just kind of grow. And then at some point when I was getting ready to graduate college, I said, all right, this has a chance to kind of grow a little bit more than I ever thought it would. Why don't I see if anybody else wants to come on board? And that's when I kind of expanded things. And now we have a great team of guys that are really passionate, but at the same time, you can feel that we're limited just because, as you may know, running an independent media outlet doesn't pay the bills. In fact, it doesn't pay any of the bills.
Yeah, Tyler and I work full time too, and we're just like, well, we do this on the side for fun. Try to do as much as we can with as little time as we have. So, it's incredible to hear. I mean, for me, I got into college baseball just because I worked in it during college. So I was a student manager at ASU, and then worked at baseball operations at Nevada, and I worked as a student manager under Mike Rooney. And like, if someone's going to get you into college baseball, that man will do it. So it's just been. I love this time of year. I love when the games are starting back up. For you, I guess, what are some of your expectations for the 2024 college baseball season?
Well, I immediately think of kind of the consequences of realignment. This is our last year of kind of, whether for better or for worse, pure college sports in terms of regional effect and those kind of rivalries that we've really grown up with, especially on the West Coast. I know it's an emotional time for teams like Oregon State and Washington State, and in Oregon State's case in particular, this is a team that has a chance to compete for a national championship. Yeah. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them really go pedal to the metal and maybe drag some skulls on their way out of that conference. And then really nationwide, you're kind of seeing the end of the COVID era that we've had where these teams are more experienced than we've ever seen. So now we kind of have that almost a finale on this era combined with that realignment looming, that we kind of have this perfect storm of experience with the same old storylines, with the fresh storylines on the horizon. So it's an exciting time. And I think some of the teams that I assume we'll talk about tonight are products of that deep experience while also having those storylines behind them.
Yeah. You mentioned the dispersing of the Pac-12, which for me, going to Arizona State, that was some of the best baseball back then. I mean, it still is some of the best baseball now today. It's not like the conference has gotten significantly worse. And it's frustrating to kind of see, just because like I love those rivalries. You had ASU, U of A, you had UCLA, USC, Oregon State, Oregon, and then Washington's going at it. And now it's going to be like, yeah, they'll still exist, but just not having that conference play is going to be weird.
Yeah, it's going to be strange to watch Washington go from playing Stanford to playing Ohio State. That's just something that we're going to have to get used to. And I'm sure along the way, maybe the Big Ten will become a stronger baseball power and we'll see that positive consequence. But right now it's kind of frustrating from especially a baseball standpoint where we know the difficulties of it's everybody's favorite cliche, but UCLA flying to Rutgers for a weekend series. It's a lot easier in football, even in basketball, than it is in baseball for a whole weekend.
Yeah, I agree. So for you, I guess, who is the top 3 teams for you? We'll both go through ours, but I'd love to hear your top 3 this year.
My personal top 3 is a 3 that isn't going to be a necessarily nationwide top 3. I think there are some teams and some programs that have earned a little bit more cachet than some have, but my personal top 3 would be Wake Forest, unanimous number 1, and then Florida, and then at number 3 I have TCU. I really love this TCU ball club. I think that they have a lot of great pieces, and Peyton Tolley is somebody to keep your eyes on for that Golden Spikes award at the end of the year.
Yeah, we had Peyton on the podcast earlier, and what an awesome personality too that kid is. He's just he's incredible to watch what he can do on both sides of the ball, and I don't think people realize he gets overlooked sometimes.
Yeah, it's easy to overlook, and especially the Big 12 conference that in itself has some realignment going on that we talked about earlier. But Peyton Tolley is a really special talent that is going to go from that Wichita State team that was kind of easy to overlook as they were kind of all over the place last year to now in a team that, as I strongly believe, is on pace to play in Omaha again this season.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good pick. I know the TCU came in at number 8 for Prospects Live. I feel like that's kind of low. I think I had them a little bit higher on my personal top 25. But I had LSU as number 1. I think regardless of, I know Wake Forest probably should be up there too. I think I have some personal bias towards LSU too. But just how much they reloaded after losing Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz and Ty Floyd. They rode with Luke Holman. They brought him in. They've got Thatcher Hurd still. They brought Cameron Johnson in as a freshman. I mean, Tommy White, Jake Brown. I think that team's going to be really loaded. I don't think they're going to be the same as they were last year, but I have them at number 1, Wake Forest number 2, and then I'd probably go Florida at number 3 as my top 3.
That's definitely a strong top 3, and I used to subscribe to the opinion that I would almost give it pre-COVID era that if you win the national championship, you're number 1 until you lose it. And for whatever reason, I've kind of just gotten the sour apples from that. I think we can thank Mississippi State and Ole Miss for that kind of easy to say, oh, you know what, never mind. But this Ole Miss team, or there I go again, this LSU team, I think the word is potential. And you just listed a lot of guys that have a ton of potential. And I was just listening to your guys' show with Jay Johnson a couple hours ago, and I think that he's somebody who could sell me on just about anything. So the way that he's able to describe the belief in his program has me ready to believe this LSU team more than I did 24 hours ago.
Yeah, and I mean, he's just how he built a winning culture everywhere he goes. Like, no matter where he steps foot in. He went to Nevada, so he was there after I was at Nevada working baseball ops. He came in and made that team like a 45-win program. It was nuts. And he just, everywhere he steps foot in, and they just start winning.
Yeah, he's something special. I was just telling somebody the other day that I would love to read maybe a 500-page book on the way that he just managed that LSU team in Omaha. Obviously a really great team, but it was really insightful to hear him talk about, all right, I just wrote on a whiteboard and said, does anybody disagree with what we have going here? And, of course, nobody would disagree with what Jay Johnson is writing on a whiteboard in that moment. But the way that he was almost playing 3D chess was really exciting to see, and the way that he was open about it was very interesting.
Yeah, it's cool to watch. So now we've gone through the top 3 schools. Who's the biggest dark horse for you this year?
I'm a massive fan of the Iowa Hawkeyes this season, which is strange because I'm an Iowa State football and basketball fan, but I'm an Iowa baseball guy through and through this season. I think that the job that pitching coach Sean McGrath has done up there to really revitalize what they have, they might have, outside of maybe Wake Forest, the best pitching rotation in the country. Arkansas has a really good argument to be in that mix as well. But the way that Iowa ball club is going to be able to compete in a conference like the Big Ten, where you don't necessarily have to have your absolute best, but the way you're able to go out and kind of get better every week is going to give them a big advantage. I think the way we saw Maryland win a few years ago was with home runs. Iowa's going to do the opposite, where they shut other teams down. Then another dark horse just from that Big Ten is Indiana. They do the opposite of Iowa. They can club the ball. The question is, can they get the outs? So I think that, not to cast a light on the Big Ten, because I would never be accused of doing that in football or hoops, but the Big Ten is in itself really a dark horse conference in terms of how far can their champion per se goes.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed watching Big Ten baseball because I'm out in the Maryland area, so I cover a lot of the Maryland games, and they always just seem to get overlooked, and their bats were just insane. And they're not going to be the same, I don't think, this year just because they lost like Ian Patrutz and a few other guys with Coach Vaughn going down to Alabama. But I've always just loved that team, and that ballpark plays for home runs.
Yeah, the Maryland team has been really great, and I went to the Big Ten tournament last year and was there pretty much every game. Maryland is a really fun brand, and obviously we'll see what this transition is like, but I generally believe in the culture that they built there, and you still have guys like Kevin Keister, Elijah Lambros that are going to be able to carry the torch for at least one more season.
Yeah, and Coach Swope, from what I've heard, is an incredible coach too, so I imagine he's going to step right in and do all right.
That's nice when you're able to have somebody who was with the program continue to lead what they were able to do before.
Yeah, love that. So now thinking about like individual players, what are some of who's your top pitcher to watch this year?
That's really interesting because I immediately go to Wake Forest and I think of not one but two guys. I think of Josh Hartle and Chase Burns. Yep. I think you get Josh Hartle and his stuff that he's going to be able to do. The question is who's going to go Friday, who's going to go Saturday down there, and either way you're going to have to tune in and watch. I think the way that Chase Burns has almost been marketed this offseason, it feels like Paul Skeens when you watch a clip of him where he's just throwing a million miles an hour. I don't think he's going to have Paul Skeens' efficiency numbers. I don't know if we'll ever see a Paul Skeens in our game again. But the way that he's able to just kind of electrify with one pitch is going to be something where you want to tune in and watch. And then Josh Hartle is just an overall disgusting pitcher that kind of survived underneath Rhett Lauder and his shadow, where now he has the chance to kind of say, you know what, I might even be better.
Yeah, I love that. The Wake Forest pitching lab, always developing stud guys. The guy I'm going with is Hagen Smith out of Arkansas. Saw some of the fall numbers come in. I think he was touching 100 miles an hour. If that velocity increase sits, I mean, that guy's going to be nasty. I love the command that he has of all his pitches. I think he could be really a force and really carry that Arkansas team this year.
Yeah, Arkansas is a team that's kind of built on pitching overall this year, and Hagen is a really, really nice piece to lead that way. We saw some really great pitching from Hagen, then we also saw him struggle against a team like TCU last year, so that there's that kind of volatility that he has. But I really think that Dave Van Horn is going to be able to smooth those kind of crevices and really get them on a straight path. The question for Arkansas would be that offense, but Hagen Smith absolutely has the chance to win any award he wants to this season.
Yeah, kid's a stud. So what about bat? Who's a player that you're watching?
Jack Caglione comes to mind, even though he's obviously a two-way guy. And then again, Wake Forest, Nick Kurtz. I think Vance Honeycutt has the opportunity to take that next step. We saw him break out as a freshman, and then a sophomore season that he was still a pretty good player, but he wasn't that Golden Spikes candidate we expected from him. And I think that he has the opportunity to kind of redeem himself in a North Carolina lineup that has some more holes than maybe they did the last few years. So those are a couple of guys that come to mind immediately. Obviously, Braden Montgomery and Jay Laviolette with Texas A&M gets me really excited as well.
Yeah, Vance Honeycutt was a guy I was going to go with just because it's really hard to find those guys that are 5'2" players across the board. I mean, the hit tool's not up there yet, but if that hit tool if he makes the adjustments that he made last year in terms of the hit tool and the power, all of a sudden comes back. I mean, you got a 5'2" guy that's going to go right at the top of the MLB draft. And so I really want to see what he does and see what he brings to the table this year.
Yeah, you think of like almost a Dylan Cruz when Vance Honeycutt is able to meet his potential. Again, not to compare anybody to Dylan Cruz, but think about somebody who can patrol center field and hit any ball he wants to out of the ballpark. That's who Vance Honeycutt almost splashed in front of our eyes as a freshman, and then we kind of had to dial it back as a sophomore. He has the opportunity to kind of be an ACC version of Dylan Cruz in every sense of the word.
Yeah, I love it. All right, so now we're going to jump into the segment that we call On the Clock here. Be revolved around kind of who you think the champions are for each conference is. But the first question is, who's going to be the 2024 NCAA baseball champion?
That is so tough.
Who's winning that College World Series?
Yeah, I almost have to put my politician hat on and start naming 10 or 12 teams.
Yeah.
My gut says it's going to be Wake Forest. I think that team is just too good, too deep. But if they do have the number one tag next to them, I'm afraid that I can't pick them. So I'm also going to say TCU.
Love it. See, you've got me sold on TCU after this podcast. I have to admit, because I've known the talent, but the coaching staff there too is insane. You got TJ Bruce, who's the associate head coach under Sarloos, who's the head, and you got Dave Long that they brought in, who's one of the best pitching coaches probably in baseball. So that squad's just fun.
Yeah, Kirk Saarloos doesn't need any help developing pitching.
No.
But he can have all he wants.
Yeah. All right. So who's going to be the Golden Spikes Award winner?
I think you have to almost go Jack Caglione just as almost a safe answer, just because he does both positions and he does them so well. Obviously, he's not the greatest pitcher in the world, and he's probably not the greatest bat in the country either. But when you combine those almost A batting with B plus pitching, you get a really tough player to beat when you're looking at what has this guy done for me? How has he led his team? And is he somebody that you tune on the TV to watch? Because I'm a big believer in that almost invisible stat. You think of somebody like Ivan Melendez, where you turn the TV on, he's batting. All right, let me watch.
Yeah, I that's a good pick. My guy's going to be Nick Kurtz. The offensive profile is so much fun. The 70-grade pop on top of the hit tool. It's hard for me to pass on Kurtz as a possibility. But I think your point's right. Like, you look at a guy who's going to play on both sides of the ball. It's like the Ohtani thing with the MVP, right? You're thinking about a guy who's going to do both and do it effectively and efficiently.
I think the only concern with picking Caglione at this time, you never know what could happen, but you have to think, what if he struggles on the mound or he struggles at the plate, but he's really, really good at the other one? How do you kind of weigh that if you're a voter in this award? And that's something that I hope we don't have to see. I hope he's great at both, but if we see a player like that, it'll be interesting to see how he's evaluated.
Yeah, like if he's not elite or something, like post a high 3 or low 4 ERA, what do you do there?
Yeah.
All right, so who's going to be the SEC champion?
This is one I've gone back and forth on. I really, really want to pick Texas A&M, but I'm going to go with Florida. I think that this Gators ball club is really set up to win right now, just like they were a year ago. But now you have some more seasoned pieces. You'd like to see one or two more starting pitchers really take the next step in that position that they have there after what they lost last year with Sproat. But I think that Kevin O'Sullivan is in a chance to win now, and I think he really, really wants to win now after the way that he went out last year.
Yeah, I love that. Going on, I think I'm probably going to go down the LSU route just because it seems like the easy answer. But I just think that team's loaded in the fact that you're going to look at guys like Griffin Canning and Cameron Johnson throwing on those like Tuesday, Wednesday type games. And I just feel like I know that Johnson's a freshman, so he's probably going to have a bit of an adjustment period. But just being able to have those guys go midweek, I think they're going to have the longevity to really pull off the conference championship, especially when you get into tournament play.
Yeah, I think this LSU program is, even if this year doesn't go as well as you may dream for them this year, I think that you can almost pencil them into Omaha in 2025, worst case scenario for this LSU team, because it's a big year where they can rely on the talent that they have that's kind of unproven. And if they are ready to step up right now, you're looking at one of the best teams in America. And if they need that extra year, Jay Johnson might be the national championship favorite in 2025 already after coming off 2023.
Yeah, I love it. What about ACC for you?
I'm going to have to go with Wake Forest, not to go chalk here, but
I'm going that way too.
I don't know if they're going to lose a series.
Yeah, it's nuts. I mean, like we've talked about it at length already, but the depth there on the mound, in the bullpen, like I know they just lost Cole Rowland not too long ago, or he's going to be out for most of the season, but they still have length, and it's still nasty coming out of every which way you can think of in that pitching rotation and bullpen.
Yeah, that rotation is so deep. And you mentioned the lab. It's like a literal lab at times. They just put a high school senior in, and out comes an All-American. Yeah. They're able to just produce at an unreal level. And kind of like Florida, they're set up to win right now. And that's really, really good for them, the way that they've been able to kind of rise slowly. But now they're ready to slam the door and say, we're here. Yeah.
I think I know your choice for this one, just based on the conversation earlier, but Pac-12 champion.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Oregon State. The team might be the most loaded in the country outside of Wake Forest, and they're easily overlooked. Plus, they're on a revenge tour.
Yep. Yeah, that's the one I would go with, too, on that one. Going with a Big Ten, I think I also might know who you're picking there, but just take a shot at that one.
I have wavered at times, but I'm going to go with Iowa because I think they're going to be able to hold off Indiana. I think it's huge for both programs that they don't play each other during the regular season. Yeah. So I'm going to give the edge to Iowa strictly based on they've kind of been in this position before, whereas Indiana might just be a year away from dominating the Big Ten, whereas Iowa's ready to right now.
Yeah, I love that. Then going into the next one, Big 12.
Yeah, I'm going to go TCU with that one. I'm tempted to go Texas. I really like this Kansas State team. I like J.J. Weatherholt at West Virginia, but I think TCU is in a position where they can kind of rise up and say, our head coach, Kirk Saarloos, is for real, and this is his program now. Jim Schlossnagle is officially out the door. This is a program that is kind of retooled, but still the same TCU that has been almost subtly dominant since about 2010.
Yeah, I love that. Going into, we have to give the mid majors some love. I don't have the mid majors here for conference championships, but who's your favorite mid major team this year?
I really like UNC Wilmington.
Mm.
And I don't know if you would call the Big East a mid-major, but I would go Xavier as well. I really like what they're going to be able to do this year. But UNC Wilmington is one that they were in the NCAA tournament a year ago, really well coached, and they're kind of in a position to welcome a new team to their conference in Campbell and still kind of be the top dog in that conference. They have Northeastern there as well. It's going to be one of those where you have to almost do iron sharpen iron. They won that conference a year ago. Now Campbell's in the mix. Can they continue to perform at that level? But Wilmington is one that you think of all the great teams in the Carolinas, they almost get overlooked a little bit just because the reality is that they are a mid-major. But this is a really, really strong team that's going to win a lot of midweek games and hopefully can string together a few NCAA tournament wins.
Yeah, that's a good pick. The one I was going to go with was UC Santa Barbara out of the Big West. The pitching that always comes out of Santa Barbara every single year, and they got Ager this year, a bunch of other guys. I remember when I worked at Nevada and we played Santa Barbara. It was just like every arm was throwing 90s. It didn't matter who was coming out, and that was back in like 2013, 2012. And so they've just always been a fun team, and they're the guys that I think have a chance to really make some noise this year.
Yeah, I think Louisville fans still have nightmares of UCSB, and
yeah,
I remember them coming to Omaha and thinking, "All right, great story, congratulations UCSB, you made it." And then they rolled out somebody named Shane Bieber, who has now won a Cy Young Award.
Yep, yeah, it's just nuts. I love it. So, for you, are there any final thoughts that you have before we kind of wrap up?
Just a great year ahead in college baseball, kind of as I led with here. It's almost not to go from Josh Pate with college football, but it's a renaissance era in college baseball where we can kind of celebrate our final year of knowing the sport that we love in the sense that Oregon State is competing at a high level, Washington State's in the Pac-12. The Big 12 is mostly teams that we know with a few new additions in there. So it's going to be kind of a bow to wrap things up. And I think that it feels like a year where something wild happens where we say, okay, where did this team come from? Even more wild than maybe an Oral Roberts. Maybe this is the year ECU wins a national championship. Something weird has to happen in 2024. We're due. We talked about 2016 today. As much as some people may not want to see a ton of mid-majors in Omaha, strictly from a financial standpoint, give it to me.
Yeah, I love it. I love when the underdogs start showing up. It makes it more fun. It's kind of like the NCAA March Madness, right? Everybody wants to see the underdogs win, and I think it's the same in college baseball. Yeah. Though we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the Clock to give us a little bit of a college baseball preview. I know all of us are excited for the season to start, but before we kind of turn over to the interview that we have, where can everybody find all your incredible work and everything that you all are doing at College Baseball Central?
Well, we're at College Base CNT on Twitter. We dabble on Instagram. We're on TikTok as well. That's not really my game, but we're also collegebaseballcentral.net is where you can find everything we write during the season, and our YouTube channel can be found under the same name as well. So we have a lot of streams going on, and like I said, we're all working 8 to 5 jobs, and then we're doing this from 5 to 8 in the morning, and then we go to our other job.
Yeah, I love it. And everybody, make sure you check out all the incredible work they're doing at College Baseball Central. Some of the best content out there, and writing and reports and everything that you could think of for the college game. And if you love college baseball, you're definitely going to want to check it out. But without further ado, we got to turn it over to an interview we have with MLB Draft prospect Casan Evans. All righty, we have another incredible interview here with On the Clock by Prospects Live. We have Casan Evans, right-handed pitcher out of St. Pius High School. Comes in at number 46 on our Prospects Live overall prep prospect list. Casan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm thankful to be on here with y'all, and glad I got the chance to talk about some baseball today.
Yeah, we really appreciate you taking the time to join us. The first question we always ask guests, a lot of people don't know who you are, so give a little bit of background on yourself, your journey through amateur baseball, some of the things you love to do outside of it, and just kind of how you've gotten to where you are today.
Yeah, for sure. So started playing baseball when I was really young. You know, my dad got me into it. He played through college and was drafted by the Royals after he had attended Lubbock Christian University. Played with them for a couple of years, and I mean, ever since I was a kid, I just fell in love with the game and just kind of went about it that way. And he's been my coach, and I've also had other coaches that are like dads to me. So just grew up playing the game, grew up loving it, and then started taking off. In middle school, I want to say, is when I started seeing myself kind of above the other players that I was playing with, and I knew I really had something. So when I went on to high school level, I was able to make varsity as a freshman and compete at that level. And then that's when I really started getting looks by colleges, and it just took off from there. I mean, just from my performance on the field to performance off the field, just knowing what to do and when to do it, I think were the main things that really helped me. And then went to a couple of showcases and camps and things like that, started getting more college looks, and then finally ended up choosing LSU as the school I wanted to be at. So, and I'm very thankful for what I have and the support I have behind me. And I think it's just amazing that what these people will do for me.
I love that. The one thing you talked about is LSU committing there recently. We recently had Jay Johnson on, so probably his personality, you can kind of see why someone would commit there. But what ultimately led you to choosing LSU?
It was mostly the coaches in the
Yeah.
community. So when I was looking at colleges, I had my top 5 that I took visits to, and the only 2 that really I wanted to play two-way. Two-way was a big thing for me. So the only 2 that really gave me the option were Tennessee and LSU, and they both took me through the process of what the two-way player goes through on a day-to-day basis, and they both showed me like how much work it was going to be to make this possible at the next level. And they both did a really good job. They had me follow around the players that they had doing it right at that moment. So that was a big thing. So kind of narrowed it down to those 2 schools towards the end, and then just getting to know the players that were going in with me in my class. Like Cade, I'd known Cade for a while, just playing against him when I was younger. And David Hogg, I started getting to know him better. Just knowing them and having comfort with the community and the support that the school has was really big for me. So I know I made the right decision on picking that school, and I'm excited to go there this summer.
I love it. Tyler, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so first thing I kind of wanted to ask was what you've done over the offseason to kind of change more or less your pitch mix, because I remember you did a showcase, I think it was at Globe Life back in like September, where you had more of a curveball, but then you threw an outing a couple days ago where it was more of a slider, according to what I saw on Twitter. So I'm kind of interested to see what you've done with the arsenal on that front.
Yeah, so at Globe Life, it was my like last event that I had went to, I had the curveball, changeup, and the four seam, and those were the main pitches throughout the summer. And then this off season, I was talking to my pitching coach. His name is Pat Burns, and he's our pitching coach at school, and been with him for 4 years now. But we were thinking of what we could do to make it better, and we thought of a slider, and we're like, okay, this could be good. We just have to figure out a way to throw it to where it doesn't hurt the arm. And then we also thought of a two seam. And the slider was a big thing for me because I already had the two seam a little bit, but not much. So we started working on the slider whenever I had started throwing again, because I usually take time off in the fall. So we started working on it. And then Friday, my first game was the first time I had thrown it in a game, and it was working pretty well. So I'm sure we're going to stick with it throughout the season and see what it can do for us.
Perfect. And kind of like, is it more of like a sweeper or just like a gyro slider?
It's more of a sweeper. We were trying to get the hard break, maybe like mid 80s slider, but this is what came out and it's working. So we're just going to stick with it.
No, perfect. And I know you mentioned two-way because I think you remember you were a shortstop primarily as like a underclassman. So do you prefer pitching over shortstop, or is it kind of like a mutual balance between the two?
I would say it's mutual. I wouldn't say I prefer one over the other. I mean, I like hitting more than I do pitching. But that's just because I grew up doing it. Like, I didn't start pitching until I was like 11, 12 years old. So I've hit for my whole life, and I just think it's like the best thing you can do on the field. But pitching has taken off for me. So I'm going to have to make a choice later on whether I want to pitch or hit, because it's hard to excel at one when you're trying to do both. So I already talked to Jay about this, and he was like, we're not going to pick for you. We're going to make you choose which one you want to do. And then when that time comes, you take off in that one.
Yeah, we asked Peyton Tolley this, who's a two-way guy at TCU. If you had 5 at-bats against yourself, who's winning? Is it the Casan Evans, the pitcher, or the hitter?
Right now, I'd say the pitcher, for sure.
Love it. So the next question that we have, so what are some of the passions that you have outside of baseball? Kind of what do you do for fun to get you away from the field and take your mind off the game?
Definitely hunting and fishing. Those are my two big ones. Do a lot more fishing than I do hunting. Just being close to the water, close to Galveston, I'm able to go down there a good amount and do fishing. But whenever hunting season's around, I try to get out there as much as possible. Just kind of picked it up over the past few years. I mean, kind of always been involved with it, just never like done it as much as I could. And over these past few years, it's like whenever I get the chance, that's what I want to go do.
Have you scouted out any hunting and fishing places in Louisiana yet?
I haven't. I've been fishing in Louisiana. I mean, a couple of years ago, but it was down south. I'd say it's about 8 or 9 hours from Houston. So it was a haul, but it was a fun trip.
I love it. So you talked a little bit about some of the changes that you made to your pitch mix that you're looking to implement this season. But what are some of your like overarching and bigger goals for the 2024 season?
State championship. That's the biggest goal that we have set at school. And that's what we're trying to achieve. I mean, it's been our goal ever since I've been at St. Pius. So we've yet to reach it. And hopefully with the team we have this year, I think we have a good chance of getting there. Minor setbacks with a few injuries, but they should be back before we get to playoffs. So it should be a run this year. Love it.
What's the furthest you guys have gotten so far?
The second round. In our playoffs, it's only 4 rounds because there's so little schools and private schools that are in our district.
Love it. Yeah, Tyler, I'll turn it over to you if you have any questions.
Yeah, I was honestly kind of curious of how Texas kind of works their divisions and leagues and whatnot, because I think North Carolina, where I'm from, it's really just like 4 classes throughout the high school levels. I think you guys have 6 or 7 or something like that. Is that true?
Yeah, it's 6 or 7. I know 6 for sure. Could be 7, but once you get to the big public schools, you're going 7 rounds and until the state championship, and they're playing through June. So the kids that are like Cade, if they make it to state, he'll play through June, and then the draft will be in July. So it's a lot for them.
When's the season start again for you all? Has it already started?
We just started, yeah.
Yeah. See, here I'm in Maryland, but they don't even start till the beginning of March because it's so cold.
Yeah, we start early. We were supposed to have our first scrimmage at the end of January, but because of the weather, we weren't able to get it in. So we played our first game on Friday. So we're getting the season rolling now.
Love it. So I guess the one of the final questions we always ask is kind of for you as your career has matured and you've kind of gotten to where you are now. When did it kind of become a realization for you that like getting drafted would be a possibility? When did you kind of start realizing that, oh, I have a chance to either go play D1 baseball or get drafted by an MLB team?
Well, when I was a freshman for D1 baseball, that's when the schools, I started talking to the schools. So that dream started to become a reality real quick, just pretty much on the mound at that point. And then the bat showed up later. So they were like, we'll give you the chance to do 2-way. So that was for the D1 school. So, but for the MLB, I would say last year really is when I kind of realized that I had a chance to be drafted. And just thinking about it's kind of crazy because 18 years old going to the draft, like living by yourself is kind of different. Like not many people get to do it, but it's one of the dreams. So I mean, if I get the chance, I would for sure go if everything's lined up and right, and just live out my dream of playing Major League Baseball.
Love it. Tyler, do you have any last questions before we wrap up?
I don't. Do you want to go ahead and do on the clock segment here?
Yeah, we can do a little bit of on clock. So we kind of give you a couple rapid fire questions here. Who do you want to win the Super Bowl tonight?
I'll go with 49ers.
Yeah, love it. Who's your NFL team? That's the second question.
Texans.
Texans.
I'm a Houston boy.
Love it. Then the last one, what is the go-to food spot in Houston for you?
Oh, I'd say Chipotle for me. I'm a big Chipotle fan. Love going there. I probably go there twice a week.
My buddy coaches high school baseball, and he does like Chipotle sponsorships for the high school baseball team. And he's like, I do it because I love Chipotle, and that's the only reason.
I do need an opinion on Raising Cane's, though. I've never had it, and I'm flying to Dallas in a couple weeks, so I want to try it. But do you have any thoughts on that?
You for sure have to try it. It is a good spot, and everyone's different. So like Houston's different than Dallas. Everything's the same, but it's just like portion sizes is weird. It's like Houston has like small cups of sauce. Dallas has bigger ones, but you for sure need to try it. I think that's one of my favorite like chicken fast food restaurants.
Perfect.
Yeah, he's going out there in February. We might be out there for the MLB draft, so we'll have to hit up Raising Cane's if we get out to Dallas.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's good for sure.
Love it. Casan, we can't thank you enough for taking the time to join us on the Clock. We're wishing you nothing but the success the rest of your season going into the draft as you kind of advance your career on to LSU or the draft or whatever you decide to do. So thank you again for taking the time to join us. Wishing you the best.
Of course. Thank y'all for having me.